the massive council chamber filled with worried voices. Representatives from 40 different worlds sat in their assigned seats, all talking at once. The emergency session had been called after something strange appeared on every sensor across the galaxy. Ambassador Su Young Kim sat quietly in the human section. Her small chair looked tiny next to the massive seats built for the larger alien species. Around her, the other representatives showed their fear in different ways. The Zephyrians flicked their forked tongues nervously. The Altarian bird people ruffled their bright feathers. The stone-like granite lords made deep rumbling sounds. "Order! We need order!" Councillor Vorth's voice boomed across the chamber. The ancient insectoid leader had served on the council for over 300 years. His 6 arms gestured for silence, while his compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights. The main holographic display showed a star map of known space. Red dots appeared all over it, marking locations where the strange energy readings had been detected. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. "The readings are unlike anything we have seen before," reported Chief Science Officer Nexus, a being made of living crystal. "The energy signatures are massive. They appear to be artificial constructs of enormous size. The Creasting Aversize, Ascompsness." Admiral Thax of the Zephyrian fleet stepped forward. His reptilian features showed deep concern. "My ships detected these signatures 3 hours ago. The power readings suggest vessels larger than our biggest dreadnoughts. Much larger. Oh no. Oh no." Murmurs of worry spread through the chamber. The Zephyrians had the most powerful fleet in known space. If something was bigger than their ships, it meant trouble. "Could they be ancient ruins?" asked Minister Vex of the Trade Federation. "Perhaps some old civilization left behind automated systems?" "Negative," Nexus replied, his crystal body flashing different colors as he processed data. "These readings show active power generation. Life support systems. Weapon signatures. These are not ruins. They are operational vessels." The chamber erupted in worried chatter again. Ambassador Kim remained silent, watching the display with calm eyes. She had not spoken since the session began. "The real concern," Admiral Thax continued, "is their positioning. Many of these signatures appeared near our major trade routes. Others are positioned close to inhabited systems. It is as if they have been watching us." Fear filled the air. The idea that some unknown force had been monitoring their civilizations without detection was terrifying. How long had they been there? What did they want? Councillor Vorth raised his arms for silence again. "We must approach this carefully. If these are vessels of an unknown species, we need to make peaceful contact. But we also need to prepare for the possibility of hostility." "I volunteer my fleet for reconnaissance," Admiral Thax declared. "The Zephyrian Navy can investigate the closest signatures and attempt communication." Several other military leaders offered their ships as well. The chamber buzzed with plans for investigation, fleets, and defensive positioning. Through it all, Ambassador Kim sat quietly. Too quietly. "Ambassador Kim." Councillor Vorth's attention turned to the human representative. "Your people have colonies near several of these signatures. Have you detected anything unusual?" Kim stood slowly. She was small compared to most beings in the chamber, but she carried herself with surprising confidence. "Our sensors have detected the same energy readings you describe. We are investigating." "Are your people concerned?" asked Admiral Thax. "These signatures could represent a threat to human colonies." Kim's expression remained calm. "Humans have faced many threats throughout our history. We have learned to adapt." Something in her tone made several representatives look at her more closely. There was no fear in her voice, no worry about potential danger, just quiet confidence. "Perhaps," suggested Minister Vex, "the humans could share their colony defense plans. Your people are known for creative solutions to dangerous situations." Kim nodded politely. "We will consider all options to ensure the safety of inhabited worlds." The session continued for another hour. Plans were made for investigation fleets. Communication protocols were established. Defense strategies were discussed. Through it all, Kim contributed little beyond polite acknowledgments. Admiral Thax noticed something else strange. While every other species representatives were constantly receiving updates from their home fleets, Kim received no messages at all. It was as if the humans already knew everything they needed to know. "Very well," Counselor Vorth finally declared. "Admiral Thax will lead the first investigation fleet to the closest signature. All other fleets will maintain defensive positions around major population centers. This session is adjourned." As representatives began filing out, Admiral Thax approached Ambassador Kim. "Ambassador, I wanted to discuss coordination between our forces. If these unknown vessels prove hostile, human colonies could be at risk." Kim looked up at the tall reptilian officer. "Your concern is appreciated, Admiral. I am confident the situation will resolve itself appropriately." "You seem very calm for someone whose colonies might be in danger," Thax observed. Kim's smile was small but somehow knowing. "Humans have been dealing with the unknown for a very long time, Admiral. We have learned that panic rarely improves any situation." She gathered her materials and headed for the exit. As she walked away, Admiral Thax felt a strange chill. There had been something in her eyes. Something that suggested the humans knew more about these mysterious signatures than they were saying. 6 hours later, Admiral Thax led his fleet toward the nearest energy signature. 12 of the Zephyrian Navy's finest ships approached the coordinates, where something massive was hiding in the darkness between stars. They found it waiting for them. The flagship's communication officer turned to Admiral Thax with wide eyes. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the contact." "Put it through," Thax ordered. The view screen flickered to life, showing a human face. The man appeared middle-aged, with kind eyes and graying hair. Behind him, Thax could see what looked like a ship's bridge, but the design was unlike any human vessel he had ever seen. "Greetings, Admiral Thax," the human said calmly. "My name is Captain Minjun Park. I believe it is time we had a conversation." Admiral Thax stared at the screen in shock. The energy signature they had been investigating was not from an unknown alien vessel. It was human. And somehow, they had been expecting him. Admiral Thax stared at the human captain on his view screen. Behind Captain Park, he could see a bridge that looked nothing like the simple human vessels he had encountered before. The walls showed complex displays with symbols he did not recognize. The technology appeared far more advanced than anything humans were supposed to possess. "This is impossible," Thax whispered to his communications officer. "Run a full sensor scan of that vessel." The officer's claws clicked rapidly across his control panel. After a few moments, his expression changed to one of disbelief. "Admiral, the readings are incredible. The vessel is over 15 kilometers long. The hull composition shows materials we have never seen before. The power output is beyond anything in our database. It makes now." Captain Park waited patiently on the screen while the Zephyrians processed what they were seeing. His calm expression suggested he was used to such reactions. "Captain Park," Admiral Thax finally managed to speak, "how is this possible? Human technology is not capable of constructing vessels of this size." Park's smile was sad and tired. "Admiral, there is much about humanity that the galaxy does not understand. We have been very careful to maintain certain misconceptions." "Misconceptions?" Thax's tail lashed behind him, a sign of deep agitation. "Are you saying humans have been deliberately hiding advanced technology?" "Not hiding, Admiral. Protecting." Park turned to look at something off-screen, then back to Thax. "Perhaps it would be better if you saw for yourself. Are you willing to come aboard? I give you my word that you and your officers will be safe." Thax looked around his bridge. His crew members were all staring at the impossible readings their sensors were providing. The human vessel was not just large, It was ancient. The hull showed signs of construction techniques that predated most current civilizations. I will come aboard, Thax decided. But I want answers. You will have them, Park promised. An hour later, Thax found himself in a docking bay that could have held his entire flagship. The human vessel, which Park had called the Eternal Vigil, was like nothing he had ever seen. The corridors were wide and tall, built for beings much larger than the humans who now operated them. Captain Park met him at the airlock. Up close, Thax could see that the human was older than he had first appeared. Much older. There were lines around his eyes that spoke of centuries rather than decades. "Welcome aboard the Eternal Vigil, Admiral," Park said, leading him through corridors lined with artwork from dozens of different worlds. "She has been my home for longer than most civilizations have existed." They walked past viewports that showed other vessels. Thax stopped in shock when he realized what he was seeing. Dozens of ships similar to the Eternal Vigil hung in space around them. A fleet of ancient human dreadnoughts that had been hidden from galactic knowledge. "How many ships?" Thax asked quietly. "In this group?" 47, Park replied. "Throughout the galaxy?" "Several hundred." The numbers were staggering. The hidden human fleet was larger than all the galactic navies combined. They entered what Park called the observation deck. Through massive windows, Thax could see the human fleet in all its impossible glory. Each vessel was a masterpiece of engineering that made his own flagship look primitive by comparison. "I do not understand," Thax said. "Why hide such power? With this fleet, humans could rule the galaxy." Park walked to one of the windows and placed his hand against the transparent metal. "Because ruling was never our purpose, Admiral. We learned long ago that power without responsibility leads to destruction." "Then what is your purpose?" Park activated a holographic display that showed the galactic map, but this version was different from what Thax knew. It showed the galaxy as it had existed thousands of years ago, with civilizations and trade routes that no longer existed. "We are guardians, Admiral. We have been watching over the development of younger species for over 5,000 years." The display changed, showing the rise and fall of ancient civilizations. Thax saw his own species' early history, but from a perspective he had never known existed. Human ships had been present during crucial moments in Zephyrian development. Disasters that could have ended his people had been quietly prevented. "This cannot be true," Thax protested. "Our histories make no mention of human intervention." "Because we were very careful to remain hidden," Park explained. "When the Zephyrian colonies on Nexus Prime faced the plasma storms that threatened to destroy your early space program, who do you think redirected those storms?" Thax remembered the stories from his people's history. The great storms that had appeared without warning, threatening their most important colonies, had mysteriously changed course at the last moment. His people had called it a miracle. When the Altarian plague threatened to destroy their entire species 300 years ago, who provided the medical knowledge that led to the cure? Park continued. The display showed more examples. The mysterious appearance of new technologies at crucial moments. Natural disasters that had been diverted from populated worlds. Hostile alien forces that had retreated for no apparent reason. "You intervened in all of these events?" Thax asked. "We have intervened in thousands of events across the galaxy. Wars that would have destroyed entire species. Natural disasters that would have ended civilizations. We have been the invisible hand guiding the galaxy toward a better future." Thax felt his understanding of galactic history crumbling. Everything he thought he knew was built on hidden human actions. "But why reveal yourselves now?" he asked. Park's expression grew darker. He activated another display that showed the edge of the galaxy. Something was approaching from the darkness beyond known space. Something massive and terrible. "Because our old enemy has found us again," Park said quietly. "The Devourers are returning. And this time, we cannot face them alone." Thax stared at the approaching signals on the display. Whatever was coming dwarfed even the human fleet. "What are the Devourers?" he asked. Park looked out at his ancient fleet with eyes full of old pain. "They are the reason we became guardians in the first place, Admiral. 5,000 years ago, they consumed half the galaxy before we managed to stop them. We scattered ourselves across the stars and spent centuries preparing for their return." The display showed the approaching enemy fleet. Hundreds of massive vessels moving toward the galaxy like a dark tide. Every world we protected, every species we guided, every intervention we made was preparation for this moment. Park continued. "We have spent 5 millennia building a galaxy strong enough to stand against the Devourers." Thax understood now why the humans had revealed themselves. They needed allies for a war that was coming whether the galaxy wanted it or not. "What do you need from us?" Thax asked. Park turned to face him. "Trust, Admiral. We need you to trust that everything we have done was to prepare for this day, and we need you to help us convince the other species that humanity's deception was necessary." Admiral Thax looked out at the impossible human fleet. Ships that had been protecting his people for thousands of years without asking for recognition or reward. Guardians who had remained hidden until the galaxy's greatest threat returned. "What happens now?" he asked. Captain Park activated his communications system. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were beginning on dozens of worlds as other human ships revealed themselves to the species they had protected. "Now we prepare for war," Park said, "and we pray that 5,000 years of preparation will be enough." The emergency council session had been called within hours of Admiral Thax's report. Now, 3 days later, the chamber buzzed with angry voices and fearful whispers. Representatives from every major species had gathered to confront humanity about their deception. Ambassador Kim stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by accusations and demands for answers. Her small figure looked even tinier under the weight of 40 species' attention, but her expression remained calm and resolute. 5,000 years of lies," shouted Minister Vex, his Trading Federation's representative. "You have been manipulating our entire civilization. Every breakthrough, every discovery, every moment of progress has been tainted by your interference," added the Altarian delegate, her feathers bristling with outrage. Councillor Vorth raised his arms for order, but the chamber remained chaotic. Fear and anger had replaced the usual diplomatic calm. The revelation that humans possessed the galaxy's largest fleet and had been secretly intervening in every species' development had shattered trust completely. Kim waited for the noise to die down before speaking. Her voice was quiet, but somehow carried to every corner of the massive chamber. "We understand your anger," she began. "We have carried the burden of this secret for thousands of years, knowing that one day we would face exactly this reaction." "Burden?" scoffed the Granite Lord representative, his stone features showing rare emotion. "You speak of burden, while you have been treating us like children." "Not children," Kim corrected gently. "Students, protégés, species with incredible potential that needed time and space to grow." She activated the chamber's main holographic display. The familiar galactic map appeared, but this version showed information that had been hidden from the Council for millennia. Trade routes that had been mysteriously safe from pirates. Asteroid fields that had been quietly cleared from shipping lanes. Hostile alien territories where aggressive species had suddenly become peaceful. "Every red marker represents a crisis we prevented," Kim explained. "Every blue marker shows a breakthrough we carefully introduced when your species were ready. Every green marker indicates a natural disaster we diverted from populated worlds." The display was covered in markers, thousands of them across every inhabited system in the galaxy. Admiral Thax stepped forward to support Kim's explanation. Since his visit to the human fleet, he had become an unlikely ally to humanity's cause. "I have seen their ships," he announced to the chamber. "I have spoken with Captain Park and learned the truth of our history. The humans could have conquered the galaxy thousands of times over, Instead, they chose to protect us. Protection we never asked for, shouted the crystalline entity representative. What gave you the right to decide our fate? Kim's expression grew sad. Experience. Terrible, costly experience. The display changed to show ancient star charts. Systems that no longer existed. Civilizations that had been wiped from history. 5,000 years ago, the galaxy faced an enemy called the Devourers, Kim continued. They were machine intelligences that consumed entire worlds, converting all life into raw materials for their expansion. In the war against them, 3/4 of all galactic civilizations were destroyed. The chamber fell silent as images of devastated worlds appeared on the display. Planets stripped bare of all life. Star systems converted into massive industrial complexes. The scope of destruction was beyond anything the current galactic community had ever imagined. Humanity was part of an ancient alliance that finally defeated the Devourers, Kim explained. But the cost was enormous. Most of our allied species were extinct. Our own civilization was nearly destroyed. We survivors made a pact to ensure such devastation never happened again. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a human xenoarchaeologist who had remained hidden until now, stepped forward with additional evidence. She had spent decades documenting the hidden history that was now being revealed. The archaeological evidence is clear, Vasquez announced. Every major species in the current galaxy shows signs of guided development. Technologies that appeared exactly when needed. Resources that were mysteriously discovered during critical shortages. Hostile neighbors who became peaceful without apparent reason. She displayed artifacts and historical records that painted a picture of subtle human intervention across thousands of years. We found references to mysterious benefactors in every culture's oldest records, Vasquez continued. Beings who appeared during crises and disappeared once the danger passed. Every religion and mythology in the galaxy contains stories of unknown guardians watching from the shadows. Counselor Vorth's ancient eyes studied the evidence with growing understanding. As the Council's eldest member, he had access to historical records that went back further than most. The Archive Keepers, he said quietly. My people's oldest legends speak of the Archive Keepers, beings who preserved knowledge during the Great Darkness, and slowly returned it to worthy civilizations. That is one name we have been called, Kim acknowledged. We have had many names across many worlds. But why the deception? Demanded Minister Vex. Why not reveal yourselves as allies instead of hiding in shadows? Captain Park's image appeared on the chamber's communications screen. The elderly human captain had been monitoring the session from his flagship. Because open intervention creates dependency, Park explained. When a powerful civilization openly protects weaker ones, those protected species never learn to protect themselves. They become children forever, looking to their guardians for solutions to every problem. We needed you to grow strong on your own, Kim added. We needed a galaxy full of independent, capable civilizations that could stand together as equals when the time came. When what time came? Asked the Altarian delegate suspiciously. Kim's expression grew grim. The time when the Devourers returned. The chamber erupted in shocked gasps and fearful murmurs. The display changed to show long-range sensor readings from the galaxy's edge. Massive energy signatures were approaching from the darkness beyond known space. They have found us again, Park announced from his ship. Our sensors detected their scout fleets 3 months ago. The main invasion force will reach the outer systems within weeks. This is why we reveal ourselves now, Kim explained to the stunned assembly. Not because we wanted to, but because we must. The galaxy faces its greatest test, and we can no longer face it alone. The chamber fell into shocked silence. The anger and accusations of moments before seemed small compared to the approaching threat. Admiral Thax stood again. If these Devourers are as dangerous as you claim, then we need to work together. Old grievances about deception will not matter if we are all dead. You expect us to trust you? Minister Vex asked. After 5,000 years of lies? You want us to follow human leadership? Not follow. Kim corrected. Stand beside us. Fight with us as equals. This is why we spent so long preparing your civilizations. This is why we guided your military development and technological advancement. So that when this moment came, you would be ready to face it as partners, not subjects. Counselor Vorth processed everything he had heard. The evidence was overwhelming, and the approaching threat was real. Despite the deception, humanity's actions had been consistently protective rather than exploitative. What do you propose? The ancient counselor asked. Kim straightened, carrying herself with new authority. We propose the largest military alliance in galactic history. Human ships and knowledge, combined with the fleets and capabilities of every willing species. Together, we can face the devourers as our ancestors should have done 5,000 years ago. And if we refuse? Asked the Granite Lord representative. Captain Park's image showed the approaching enemy fleet in greater detail. Hundreds of massive vessels that dwarfed even the human dreadnoughts. Then you will face them alone, Park said simply. And they will destroy you as they destroyed our ancestors. The choice is yours. The chamber fell silent as every representative contemplated the impossible choice before them. Trust the species that had deceived them for millennia, or face annihilation alone. Outside the council chambers, human fleets throughout the galaxy waited for the answer that would determine whether the galaxy stood united or fell divided. The vote took 2 days. When it finally came, 37 species chose to stand with humanity. Only 3 refused the alliance, claiming they would rather face the unknown threat alone than trust species that had deceived them. Admiral Thax had volunteered to serve as the liaison between human forces and the Allied fleets. Now he stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil beside Captain Park, watching the largest military gathering in galactic history take shape around them. I never imagined such a sight, Thax admitted, staring out at the combined fleet. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species formed organized battle groups under human coordination. Zephyrian destroyers flew alongside Altarian fighters. Granite Lord battleships positioned themselves next to crystalline entity support vessels. Nor did we, Park replied quietly. We always hoped this day would never come. But if it had to come, we wanted to face it with allies rather than subjects. The massive holographic display at the center of the bridge showed the approaching Devourer fleet in terrifying detail. Long-range sensors had been tracking their progress for weeks. The enemy force was larger than anyone had hoped and moving faster than the worst predictions. Estimated arrival at the outer colonies? Thax asked. 16 hours, reported the human navigation officer. They will reach the Kepler system first. Population 2 billion, across 4 inhabited worlds. The Allied fleet was still forming. Ships continued to arrive from across the galaxy as species that had never worked together attempted to coordinate their forces. Communication protocols had to be established. Tactical doctrines had to be shared. Thousands of years of independent development had created wildly different approaches to space combat. Sir, the communications officer announced, we are receiving a transmission from Earth. Park's expression grew somber. Throughout the crisis, Earth had remained silent. The human homeworld had not participated in the fleet gathering or the diplomatic negotiations. Many allied species had wondered why humanity's most important world was absent from such a crucial moment. Put it through, Park ordered. The view screen flickered to show a middle-aged human woman with silver hair and eyes that seemed far older than her apparent age. Behind her, Thax could see what looked like a massive control room filled with displays and monitoring stations. Captain Park, the woman said formally. This is Director Lee Min-ho of Earth Defense Command. Are you prepared to receive the authorization codes? Park straightened to attention. We are prepared, Director. The woman's expression was grave. Then, by the authority granted to me by the Global Defense Council, I hereby activate Protocol 7. Authorization Code Omega 7, 7 Alpha. May whatever gods are watching forgive us for what we built. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Thax noticed that every human crew member had stopped their work to watch the exchange. There was fear in their eyes, but also determination. Captain, Thax asked carefully, what is Protocol 7? Before Park could answer, the ship's sensors erupted in alarms. Every display on the bridge shifted to show something impossible happening in the Sol system, over 1,000 light-years away. Earth was changing. The sensors showed massive structures rising from the planet's surface. Continents shifted as hidden installations revealed themselves. The planet's electromagnetic signature spiked to levels that should have been impossible for a living world. What is Earth doing? Thax whispered. Becoming what it was always meant to be, Park replied sadly. Earth is not just our homeworld, Admiral. It is our greatest fortress, our final failsafe, a weapon capable of destroying threats that even our fleets cannot handle. The display showed Earth's transformation in real time. The planet itself was becoming a massive battle station, with weapon systems that dwarfed anything in the combined fleet. It was a sight that filled Thax with both awe and horror. The cost of activating Earth's systems is enormous, Park explained. It will take centuries to restore the planet to a habitable state afterward. We hoped we would never need to use it. But now you do? The Devourer command ship is 3 times larger than our biggest dreadnought, Park said grimly. Only Earth has the firepower to destroy it. As if summoned by their conversation, new contacts appeared on the sensors. The Devourer Vanguard had arrived at the galaxy's edge. The enemy ships were unlike anything the Allied forces had encountered. Sleek, black vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Even through the sensors, they radiated a sense of cold intelligence and ruthless purpose. All ships, this is Admiral Thax, the Zephyrian commander announced over the fleet communication system. Enemy contact confirmed. All units assume battle positions. The Allied fleet moved into formation with surprising coordination. Weeks of desperate preparation had forged working relationships between species that had never fought together. Human tactical doctrine had been adapted to accommodate different technologies and fighting styles. Devourer ships are jamming our long-range communications, reported the sensor officer. But we are still receiving telemetry from the outer colonies. The displays showed the first engagement as Devourer scouts encountered the outer system defense platforms. The ancient human installations that had been hidden throughout the galaxy for millennia finally revealed their true purpose. Massive weapon platforms opened fire on the approaching enemy vessels. But the Devourers had learned from their ancient defeat. Their ships were better armored and more heavily armed than the historical record suggested. Several defense platforms were destroyed in the first exchange. They have adapted, Park observed grimly. 5,000 years has been enough time for them to evolve as well. The main Devourer fleet began its approach to the galaxy's inhabited systems. Hundreds of massive vessels that moved with coordinated precision. Behind them, even larger ships that the sensors could barely track. Contact, announced the sensor officer. Massive energy signature approaching from deep space. It is larger than anything in our database. The display showed something that made everyone on the bridge fall silent. The Devourer command ship was approaching the battlefield. It was a construct so large it could barely be called a ship. More like a mobile space station with the firepower of an entire fleet. How do we fight something like that? Thax asked. Park activated the communication system, connecting to every ship in the Allied fleet. His voice carried to hundreds of thousands of crew members across dozens of species. This is Captain Park of the human fleet, he announced. Today we face an enemy that has haunted the galaxy for 5,000 years. They believe that life is weak and that machine intelligence is superior. They have come to prove that belief by destroying everything we have built together. The enemy fleet continued its approach, growing larger on the sensors with each passing moment. But they do not understand what they face. Park continued. They see individual species fighting separately. They expect fear and confusion. Instead, they will find something they have never encountered before. Unity. Cooperation. Species that have learned to fight as one. Admiral Thax stepped forward to add his own voice to the broadcast. Today we fight not as humans or Zephyrians or Altarians. We fight as guardians of life itself. We stand together against those who would destroy everything we love. Across the fleet, crew members prepared for battle. Weapons charged, shields activated. Fighter squadrons launched from carriers. The largest military force in galactic history, prepared to face its greatest test. The Devourer fleet reached optimal firing range and opened fire. The battle for the galaxy's survival had begun. On Earth, now transformed into a planetary weapon. Director Lee watched the distant battle through quantum communications. The planet's massive guns were charging, preparing to fire a shot that could cross the galaxy in seconds and destroy the enemy command ship. But first, the Allied fleet had to survive long enough to create an opening. Everything depended on species that had been secretly protected for millennia, now proving they could protect themselves. The battle raged across 3 star systems. The Allied fleet fought with desperate courage against an enemy that seemed to absorb damage without slowing down. Devourer ships moved with mechanical precision, their dark hulls reflecting nothing while their weapons carved through space in silent, deadly arcs. Admiral Thax watched his tactical display with growing concern. The Allied forces were holding their formations, but barely. Every minute of fighting revealed new enemy capabilities that the ancient records had not mentioned. They have improved their shielding technology, reported Captain Park from his position at the Fleet Coordination Station. Our weapons are less effective than projected. A Granite Lord battleship exploded in a brilliant flash as Devourer plasma beams overwhelmed its defenses. The massive stone ship had taken 4 enemy vessels with it, but the exchange rate was not in the Alliance's favor. Zephyrian 3rd Squadron, fall back to defensive line Beta. Thax ordered over the communication system. Altarian fighters, cover their withdrawal. The bird-like Altarians responded instantly, their sleek fighters darting between the larger ships to provide protection. Their natural flying abilities had translated perfectly to 3-dimensional space combat. Sir, the communications officer announced, we are receiving a transmission from Earth. Director Lee's image appeared on the view screen. Behind her, the massive control room was alive with activity as Earth's planetary weapon systems reached full charge. Captain Park, Admiral Thax, she announced formally. Earth Defense Command reports all primary weapons fully charged. We have a clear firing solution on the Devourer command ship. Park studied the tactical display. The enemy command ship hung back from the main battle, protected by layers of smaller vessels. Destroying it would cripple the Devourer fleet's coordination. But Earth's shot needed a clear path through the defensive screen. Negative on firing authorization, Park replied. Too many friendly ships in the firing corridor. We need to create an opening. Understood. Earth will maintain readiness. We have one shot at this. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew to focus on the impossible task ahead. The Allied fleet needed to punch through the Devourer defensive line and hold open a corridor long enough for Earth to take its shot. Admiral, Park said quietly to Thax, I need to ask something of you that I have no right to ask. Thax looked at the human captain, seeing the weight of command in his eyes. What do you need? The Eternal Vigil and her sister ships are going to make a direct assault on the enemy command ship. We need the rest of the fleet to create a diversion and hold the corridor open. It was a suicide mission. The human dreadnoughts would have to punch through the heaviest enemy defenses and survive long enough for Earth to fire. The chances of survival were minimal. My ships will support your assault. Thax replied, without hesitation. Admiral, you do not understand. This is not a request for support. This is a request for you to take command of the Allied fleet. After we are gone. Thax stared at the human captain. After millennia of hidden protection, humanity was preparing to sacrifice their greatest assets to save the galaxy they had secretly guarded. There has to be another way. Thax protested. Park smiled sadly. There is no other way. This is what we have prepared for across 5,000 years. This is why we built these ships and trained these crews. Not to rule or to conquer, but to stand between our allies and destruction when the moment demanded it. Across the fleet, human dreadnoughts began moving into assault formation. 47 massive ships that represented the accumulated knowledge and sacrifice of millennia prepared for their final mission. All Allied vessels, Park announced over the fleet communication system. This is Captain Park. The human fleet is beginning our assault on the enemy command ship. Hold the line, protect each other. And remember that today, we fight not just for survival, but for the right of life to exist in this galaxy. The human ships accelerated toward the enemy defensive line. Their ancient weapons, hidden for so long, finally revealed their true power. Beams of coherent energy punched through Devourer shields like they were paper. Missile salvos that could crack planets cleared paths through the enemy formations. But the cost was terrible. One by one, the human dreadnoughts fell to concentrated enemy fire. Ships that had sailed between the stars for thousands of years died in flames and silence. Admiral Thax found himself in command of the largest fleet in galactic history as the surviving Allied ships fought to keep the corridor open. Zephyrian destroyers darted between enemy vessels, drawing fire away from the remaining human ships. Altarian fighters swarmed enemy gunboats, their pilots pushing their craft beyond safe limits. The humans are breaking through, reported the sensor officer. 3 human ships have reached optimal firing range of the command ship. On Earth, Director Lee watched the tactical display with growing hope. The corridor was open, but barely. Enemy ships were already moving to close it. All Earth defense batteries, she announced. Fire on my mark. Target the Devourer command ship. Full power. The planet itself became a weapon. Every continent discharged energy that had been building for hours. A beam of pure destruction lanced across the galaxy, traveling faster than light through carefully prepared dimensional channels. The shot took 3 seconds to cross the intervening space. When it struck the Devourer command ship, the result was visible from 1,000 light-years away. The massive vessel simply ceased to exist, vaporized by forces that could have cracked a moon. The effect on the Devourer fleet was immediate. Without central coordination, the machine ships began operating on independent protocols. Their formation dissolved into chaos as individual vessels tried to complete conflicting objectives. Now, Admiral Thax shouted over the communication system. All ships, full assault. Show them what free species can accomplish when they fight together. The Allied fleet surged forward with renewed energy. Ships that had been barely holding defensive lines suddenly found themselves overwhelming confused enemy vessels. The tide of battle turned as species that had learned to fight together proved superior to machines that could only follow programmed responses. Captain Park watched from the bridge of his dying ship as the alliance he had helped create claimed victory. The Eternal Vigil had taken critical damage during the assault, but her crew had lived long enough to see their mission completed. Admiral, he said to Thax over the communication link, the galaxy is in good hands. One by one, the remaining Devourer ships were destroyed or disabled. The ancient enemy that had once consumed civilizations across the galaxy was finally defeated by the very species it had tried to destroy. In the aftermath of victory, Admiral Thax stood on the bridge of his flagship and surveyed the Allied fleet. Ships from 36 species floated together in space, their crews working side by side to rescue survivors and repair damage. Admiral, his communications officer announced, we are receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Every major system is reporting the defeat of Devourer forces in their regions. The enemy has been completely eliminated. Thax nodded, then opened a channel to the entire fleet. This is Admiral Thax, to all Allied vessels. Today we have proven that life will always triumph over emptiness. Unity over isolation. Hope over despair. The galaxy is safe because we chose to stand together. On Earth, Director Lee began the long process of powering down the planetary weapon systems. The transformation back to a livable world would take centuries, but it was a price humanity had been prepared to pay. The age of secret guardianship was over. Humanity had revealed their true nature and purpose, sacrificing their hidden protector role to save the galaxy they had watched over for so long. In the months that followed, a new galactic council formed, with humanity taking their place as senior partners rather than hidden guardians. Species that had been secretly protected for millennia now stood as equals, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. Captain Kim, now promoted to admiral, stood before the new council as they established protocols for shared defense and mutual cooperation. The deception was over. The partnership had begun. Admiral Thax, now serving as the council's military coordinator, watched ships from dozens of worlds patrol together through space that had once been divided by suspicion and fear. The galaxy had learned to stand united, and in the depths of space where the human dreadnoughts had made their final stand, memorial beacons marked the sacrifice of guardians who had finally revealed themselves when the galaxy needed them most.